Welcome, Magdalene, to this conversation.
Thank you.
I know you do a lot on knowledge issues, and I would just like us to begin this conversation by talking about the centrality of knowledge in life.
Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to be here and to share what I think knowledge is. Personally, I feel it's very important for a person to be aware. Be aware of yourself, be aware of your environment, and be aware of what is going on around you. I'm particularly very interested in knowing things. I want to know what is the climate for today. I want to know what is the political situation of where I live. And in the context of my work as an environmental campaigner, I would say activist as well, I think it's very important to also know the politics with the environmental crisis of today. And to be able to know, it means you have to think. And to be able to think, it means you have to read. And then you will know. So I have read people's work. What are people doing? What are people saying about the capitalist crisis which drives the environmental crisis of today? Beyond capitalism, it is like the imperial colonial legacy that exists and continues to exist in a new colonial context and drives the quest for profit, the greed, and just to be able to understand why are we fighting? Why is the crisis? Why does it continue with so much fight, with so much struggles and movement? You have to know what the politics is. And to me, that is the center of it all. You need to be able to go deeper to know the source, and which is rooted in the extractivist, capitalist, I would say concord of global elite. So yes, knowledge is very important to me. And yeah, I think that's it.
Well, thank you for that. I have a lot of questions arising from what you've just said.
Yeah.
But let's start by just asking, do you think people are very much aware of what is going around them, or the people are taking things in their stride as they come? Do you think there should be a campaign for expansion of knowledge about what is really going on, the root causes of the crisis?
Yes, totally. I think people are aware of, we are aware of the hunger. I mean, you're not told that you're hungry, you just know you're hungry.
Right.
People are aware of the poverty, and we see it all around us, and some of us live it. We are aware, for someone like me, and to you, Nemo, who is from the Niger Delta, unfortunately, we're aware of the exploitation, the continual extraction and dispossession of not just communities, women whose livelihood is rooted in their environment where the capitalist interest is so surrounded and so focused on. So people are really aware. But in terms of the level of awareness, how aware are you of the issue and who is driving it? And I think this is where we need to expand our campaigns. So there are cases where people believe that the hunger and the poverty that we see today is like it's meant to be that way. I mean, there are people who are supposed to be born and some people that are supposed to be poor. And somehow, I even heard it, I think yesterday someone said that it's recorded somewhere that some of us were meant to be poor at some point. And there's nothing we could do about it. And I think it's such a false fallacy. So yeah, so there's need to really expand to get people to know the root of why there's so much hunger. Why is it that we work so hard? I think the hardest worker of this world are the working class people, the farmers, the fishers, and yet those who fish continue to fish, yet they don't have fish to eat. Those who farm continue to farm, and then there's no food. It means somebody is interested in sapping the profits, and it becomes the economy of today. And it's just like people just say it's the economy. And nobody's really looking at who drives the economy. The political elite, the people who are so interested in profit and do not care about the livelihoods of the people where the profit is being driven from. So it is very important, not just to campaign, but to get people to understand what the root causes of the issues are. And then there's a thing like, okay, so when people know, what do you want them to know? Yes, but it's important that people should know and then decide what they want to do with that information. So I totally agree.
And so there are people who have vested interest in ensuring that people don't understand the root causes of the problems. And there are some terminologies and phrases that are being used to describe the public crisis. For example, sometimes the climate change are caused by human activities, but then we don't say which human.
Exactly.
Or which corporations are. Is it all the humans?
They said it's anthropogenic as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is very interesting because as an undergraduate of a student of environmental science, I think one of the core definition of the environmental crisis has always been the anthropogenic. That is anthropogenic. It is caused by human activities. And so there's something fundamentally wrong with that definition because you sweep everyone into
one group,
into groupings. Like you sweep all of us as being the one causing the climate or the environmental crisis, and then you say that we all have to do something about it. Yes, it's important that we do something about it, but I think it is very important that there are those who have caused it more than others. There are those who have exploited beyond, and someone like my grandmother. When you say anthropogenic, for example, my grandmother just lives in the farm, works in the farm, and she does the most sustainable method of farming, as you would describe as agroecology. And then you would say that my grandmother is anthropogenic. So it sweeps everyone, which is totally unfair, unjust. And I think this is where the climate justice movement is rooted in, that those who are found culprit to have caused the climate crisis should be those to be held accountable to do the cleanup. So the word anthropogenic and through what it should really call out. There should be a definition, maybe a word. As I'm very aware that you're very brilliant, you would give us a word to how do we describe, how do we define the climate crisis to really situate those who cause the crisis and not just this anthropogenic crisis, and hence the betting of words, which I have listened to you speak about. Like, we need to bed words that describe the crisis and describe it to what it is. We need to bed words that names it and not just to sweep everyone into it. Yeah.
We need to interrogate concepts, unpack some words, and decolonize the language itself.
Yeah.
And really frame them the way that they describe what is going on and who is behind the horrors that we're seeing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We need to do that. Yeah.
Right. You reference the fact that we have to study, read a lot, and what books have really influenced your thought patterns and the work you're doing? What kind of books should we read? Fiction, non-fiction?
I think we should read everything, but I like to read so much, but it all started for me in trying to really, it all started for me within the environmental context. I was looking for a description that actually describes the context where I live in. And just to say that there is no experience we've had that people have written about it, people have described it. So to me, it became a quest to look for. When I'm talking about the environmental crisis in the Niger Delta, for example, or the human rights issues, the injustices that goes on, it's going on somewhere else, and someone has theorized that. So I searched. I wanted to see how someone captures it, and the most profound description I came across was Ken Saro-Wiwa's book, Prisoners of Jebs. Prisoners of Jebs by Ken Saro-Wiwa, which I highly recommend, didn't just talk about the environmental context, the exploitation that goes on in Niger Delta, but it was like a description of the exploitation by the state in itself. And that the state, what I mean by the state, is like those who control the economy in the country we live in, are so invested in making sure you do not see where you're being hurt. And Ken Saro-Wiwa tried to expose the corruption that exists, that the exploitation in the Niger Delta couldn't have gone on so long without the contribution of the state in itself. And the state in itself introduces apparatus like the military bases where it controls and situates this wealth. And Kentawewa roots this to colonialism. It roots this to the colonial legacy that exists, that even our government are still colonial in itself. And also there's another book by Frank Fanon, Wretched of the Earth. Really, it's a good one. And when you read Wretched of the Earth by Fanon, and then you look at the Niger Delta, you could see clearly that the Niger Deltans are the wretches of the earth, where there's continuous extraction. And just like you said just recently in one of your, I think, media reports, show me a single place in the Niger Delta where there's development. So yeah, I totally agree with everything we said. It's important that we read books, and the books that have inspired me are books that are written by Black authors who have theorized the injustices, whether it's colonialism, neo-colonial imperialism, and extractivism that exists. I've also read books by women who stood up to resist patriarchy. Patriarchy that is woven in the extractive colonial structure that exists today.
Tell us a bit more about that.
So I have read a book by, let me see, I have read the history of the women resistance in Nigeria, first of all. So I have read I think it was an anthology of they call it the Aba Women's Riot, but there's a contestation around the word riot.
Yeah.
That they stated itself as corrupted riot and made it look so awful to say it was a riot.
Very true.
So yes, I don't know what I would describe it, but it was like a massive movement of women who have resisted exploitation. And it is the movement of women who came together and said, no, this is enough. Enough of, I think it started with taxes, where people were to be taxed. And it happened that there's this particular woman who didn't have a husband, and you wanted to tax her goat and whatnot. And then there used to be women assembly where you could go and report this kind of issues and say, this is what is going on. And then you have the massive support of women. So I read this kind of history and I'm like, okay, this is so interesting. And then I read about the women resistance against the oil companies in the Niger Delta, the massive women's movement. They shut down the oil companies, I think for 8 days, and just to demand that the oil extraction do not recognize the self-independence, the self-determination and self-sovereignty of women is still woven in patriarchy, where women do not have rights, access to land. And there were cases where even when there's some sort of compensation to individuals who have been exploited in the Niger Delta, the money never got to women because men were the one in charge, and they were the chiefs who were, liaising with the government bodies or whatever that came in. And then you can see that even some men are here absconded with large sum of money.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's not only the Niger Delta. I've heard this happening also in Uganda, where the East African crude oil pipeline is being built, refineries being constructed, they're really displacing communities. And when compensations are paid at all, some men just take it off and marry new wives.
Yeah, and personally, I had a good laugh, which is so sad because, you've never seen this kind of money before. Even if, I don't know what I would do. So they abscond with the money, and the women are just stranded.
They are left to the wrong end of the stick.
So there is this crisis.
It's part of the it's a whole geography of exploitation. Because even the so-called compensation never compensates for what is lost. It doesn't compensate for the communal life that's been broken, family life that's being destroyed.
Exactly.
Now, as a final question for this phase of our conversation, we've been talking a lot about the good life. EtiUwem, for example, Ubuntu and the rest, and you work on EtiUwem. What to you constitutes a good life?
Good living, if I can respond vividly, is so when I was growing up, I, as a very good Christian girl, in our church, we used to have representation of a human representation of what good life is. So there was this woman they called EtiUwem. And yes, So the church in itself looks at the community and picks somebody who represents the word in itself. EtiUwem means good living, yet you have lived in a way that does not displace others. You have lived and extended so much to others. And you've not just lived, you have lived recognizing that you are not you without the next person. And EtiUwem is also a concept of Ubuntu, Utu, of South Africa and other African countries. So when you look at this, she embodies the totality of EtiUwem. And it became clear that if you really have to look at what is EtiUwem, you look at Madam EtiUwem in church. So, and maybe this is the simplest I could describe to what I understand. But in the context of Ubuntu, it's rooted in a we and not this individualistic capitalist ideology. It is a system that you cannot ascribe who you are to anything without the next person. And yeah, I totally agree. And I think this is concept by you, which we should popularize. EtiUwem. And I totally agree with you. It is a system of living to recognize that there are other things beyond you. It is a system of living to understand that you cannot eat all of it. You have to extend it to someone else. You have to recognize there are people who need the same thing as you. So it's a collective way of being, not the individualistic nature of being that we are seeing today in Catholic society.
And so we need more people standing up to be an embodiment of EtiUwem, of good living, and then we need to see communities of good living.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
agree with that?
I totally agree with you.
So we pause, take this pause here. Congratulations
Thank you
on
so
your
much.
work. Well
Thank
done.
you.
Yeah.